Buddhism to the West, by Venerable Rung Ruang Papas Saro, Dr. Rung Ruang Lim Chupatipa. Buddhism became known in the West through the archaeological discoveries of Buddhist monuments by Sir Alexander Cunningham, the founder of Indian archaeology, during the period of 1835 to 1861. This archaeological discovery was complemented by the script translation of Mr. James Prinsep, who was the first to decipher the Asoka inscriptions called the Buddhist period in India, which revealed the story of Buddhism during the Asoka period in India's history in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent. In the 18th century, Buddhism became more well-known among Western scholars, largely due to the efforts of Sir Edwin Arnold, a poet and journalist. He authored The Light of Asia, 1879, a narrative poem that tells the life and teachings of the Buddha. He described Buddhism as follows.
Between Buddhism and modern science, there exists a close intellectual bond. And when Darwin shows us life passing onward and upward through a series of constantly improving forms towards the better and best, each individual starting a new existence with the records of bygone good and evil stamped deep and ineffable from the old ones, what is this again but the Buddhist doctrine of Dharma and Karma? Finally, if we gather up all the results of modern research and look away from the best literature to the largest discovery in physics and the latest findings in biology, what is the conclusion, the high and cheerfulness conclusion, forced upon the mind, if not that which renders true Buddhism so glad and hopeful?
In the 19th century, when Buddhism was first introduced to the West, a famous biologist, Thomas Huxley, commented on Buddhism from a scientist's point of view as follows.
Buddhism is a system which knows no God in the Western sense, which denies a soul to man, which counts the belief in immortality a blunder and the hope of it a sin, which refuses any efficacy to prayer and sacrifice, which bids men look to nothing but their own efforts for salvation, which, in its original purity.
This was probably the first review of Buddhism as a science by a scientist. The uniqueness of Buddhism as a religion is that it is based on facts and science, not only believing and having faith in God. Huxley's vision of Buddhism as an ancient science was very spectacular. Therefore, in studying the Buddha's teachings, we must make a careful investigation based on the facts and truths in nature. Reaching to the modern time, William James, who was a founder of modern psychology, explained that the mental phenomenon of a state of mind could be observed during the feeling of consciousness, and being alive was simply a series of a stream of consciousness. He adopted the Buddhist concept of insight observation into modern psychology, and he suggested a strategy to study the mind as follows.
Mental phenomena should be studied indirectly through the careful observation on behavior and of the brain and should be examined directly by means of introspection. Among these three approaches, the introspective observation was what we had to rely on first and foremost and always.
The Buddhist notion of no self is something very abstract, and it is recognized by scientist Dennis Noble, who is a founder of Biology System. As a matter of fact, a biological system is a natural system that has no self, as follows.
Buddhism is to say that it is itself a form of science, open to test in the form of personal experience in examining oneself and one's relationship to the world. It is a key aspect of that experience to find that there is no such thing as the self, an idea of no self.
As a scientist who relies only on facts in nature, the notion of no self in Buddhism is a way to explain that there is no self who can control the world or anyone's life at all, but it is the law of nature of which everything in nature abides by the law of cause and effect. As there are many significant advancements in neuroscience, an interesting application of this research is in the field of cognitive processes. This is called a cognitive science. After the Buddha gained the knowledge of his enlightenment, he also experienced a challenging situation of how to teach his knowledge to the public, so he developed a special Buddhist practice with mindfulness to perform an insight observation. The mindfulness was then used as a foundation for cognitive processes in Buddhism. Francisco Varela, as one of the founders of cognitive science, summarizes Buddhism as follows.
Buddhism is a practice, not a belief, and every Buddhist is, in some way, lay clergy, involved in the way a scientist is involved in his or her work, or in the way a writer's mind is involved in writing, present in the background at all times. People today have the leisure and sophistication to practice what before was only practical for monks. Buddhism affects Western culture through the individuals who practice it, through people who occasionally take it up as an escape. Buddhist ideas are prevalent throughout our culture. In physics and biology, for example, the basic ideas are Buddhism in disguise. My view of the mind has been influenced by my interest in Buddhist thought. Buddhists are specialists in understanding this notion of a virtual self, or a selfless self, from the inside as lived experience. The essence of the convergence of Buddhism and science that, from Buddhism's perspective, life is in fact a cognitive process. Buddhist ideas are prevalent throughout our culture. In physics and biology, for example, the basic ideas are Buddhism in disguise. My view of the mind has been influenced by my interest in Buddhist thought. Buddhists are specialists in understanding this notion of a virtual self, or a selfless self, from the inside as lived experience.
This modern science, including modern psychology, neuroscience, and cognitive science, is somehow related to Buddhism. The more advances in science and technology, the better we understand the Buddha's teachings. That is, the Enlightenment, the greatest scientific knowledge on the mind leading to a good understanding of life.